Greetings there, everyone. This is Judge Schlackman, and in this video I'll be talking about energy fields and energy bodies. Those who are into the fields of energy medicine and energy healing will often use these terms. You'll often hear them talked about and discussed, and there are really a variety of models or theories providing labels and descriptions for the different layers of the energy field or different energy bodies. So I'm going to go through a couple of the more well-known explanations of these systems. So I have a couple books I'll be showing you some images, some diagrams from that provide labels for different energy fields or energy bodies. And I'll talk a little bit more about how I understand these in the context of therapy, of healing practices. For those that are familiar with the healthcare system, we see that people specialize in different areas of therapy or healing. So you have physicians, medical doctors, and they're focused primarily on the physical layer, on the physical body. However, the physical body exists at the end of this spectrum of energy fields. So it's just the most condensed or dense layer of energy. It's really the tip of the iceberg in a sense. And most of who we are as a being is in the non-physical or subtle energy layers. So if we're looking to access more potential in healing or transforming ourselves, we need to go deeper and not focus exclusively on the physical body. Very often people will treat things just on a physical level, and they'll be able to get some form of temporary result, some temporary relief of symptoms, and then later the same issue will just keep popping up again. The same problem will come back because they only treated things on the surface. They didn't really get to the deeper layers or levels of their being, of their energy system, where these particular issues or imbalances more often than not stem from. So we want to be able to consider really all these different layers or levels of the energy system. They are all part of who we are, and if we're only focusing on one level and neglecting the others, we really have less chance of getting the results or outcomes that we're seeking or desiring. So let's first look at the subtle body. So this is kind of like an encyclopedia of energy healing or energy medicine from Cindy Dale. She's the author. She's an intuitive energy healer, and she's compiled a lot of great references and resources here. So in her book there's a valuable diagram. So we're going to look at that diagram here. So this is an illustration where she depicts the physical body surrounded by these different layers of energy. So we could call them energy bodies or energy fields. And Cindy Dale refers to the veritable fields. And she writes, the chief field that generates and perpetuates life is the electromagnetic spectrum. The other life-sustaining category is sound fields, also called sound or sonic waves. Let us examine these fields in relation to the illustration of energy fields. Each part of the electromagnetic spectrum manifests as radiation that vibrates at a specific rate and therefore is called electromagnetic radiation. Our body requires a specific amount of each part of the spectrum for optimal physical, emotional, and mental health. We can become ill or imbalanced if exposed to too much or too little of any particular stratum from the spectrum. So looking now at that illustration, subtle energy fields, it says there are hundreds, if not thousands, of subtle energy fields. The primary fields generated by the body include the auric field, the morphological field, and the L and T fields. And we'll explain a little bit more about what she refers to with those labels. In addition, we are affected by the Earth's geofields as well as by the greater universal light field. So she shows this sort of spectrum or octave of fields, the major fields that surround our physical body. So the first section she refers to as the auric field, then next the morphological field, then the T field, then the L field, then going further out the universal field, and finally the geofields or earth fields. The human energy field is primarily composed of the aura, a set of energy bands that graduate in frequency and color as they move outward from the body. Each of the auric fields opens to different energy planes and energy bodies, and also partners with a chakra, thus exchanging information between the worlds outside and inside of the body. Morphological fields allow exchange between like-minded species and transfer information from one generation to another. These penetrate the auras as well as the electrical system of the body. So the morphological fields would relate a lot to genetics, to ancestral memory, to those patterns of information. Geofields act upon all living organisms, as do energies from outside the Earth. So there are other planetary bodies and the sun and moon, and those energy fields are essentially not limited to the physical confines of those bodies or planets. The energy continues to radiate, and it affects other organisms throughout the solar system. Next, she refers to the universal light field called a zero-point field. This consists of photons or units of light that regulate every living thing. Our DNA is made of light, and we are surrounded in a field of light. Thus, the microcosm and macrocosm dance together. Then the L fields and T fields are subtle electrical and thought fields which are acted upon by electrical and magnetic energies. These fields compose the undetected aspects of the electromagnetic spectrum. So with our technology, we have instruments that sense or measure electromagnetic fields, but only within a certain measurable range that those instruments can perceive. So she's explaining here that there's parts of that electromagnetic spectrum which exist even beyond what we have identified with modern science. And that goes into the levels of energy that involve perhaps your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings and beliefs. So those are all frequencies, they're all energy, and they exist in some form beyond what we can measure, while that information and those frequencies are coming here into our physical body in some sense through the electromagnetic circuitry and fields that are actually measurable, and we could perhaps interface with those electrical fields and currents and tap into some of that information. So that's an overview of this system or this spectrum of fields and energy bodies from the Subtle Body manual here from Cindy Dale. So that's her basic summary of these fields of energy and how they each function and contribute to who we are and contribute to our physical health, to our mental and emotional health. Those who are practicing any form of therapy or treatment are interacting with or interfacing with a person through at least one level of this system. So if you're seeing a physical doctor who's giving you some form of chemical medicine, they're working on the physical biochemical level, but the chemistry is always interacting with the electromagnetic, the electrical and magnetic fields. So one can't exist really without the other. If you think about basic chemistry that you might learn in high school or college, you learn about electrical potentials, about ions, about electrical charge, and how that affects the way all of these chemical elements are interacting with each other, chemical reactions, right? So everything is being influenced by the energetic and electromagnetic layers. Next, we're going to look at a summary explanation of energy bodies and energy fields from the book Hands of Light. And this is a classic in the field of energy healing by Barbara Ann Brennan. And Brennan was actually originally a scientist working at NASA, and she developed her clairvoyant skills, her healing abilities, and kind of brought together the physics and scientific understanding of things with the metaphysical, with the clairvoyant perception, and created a system which is designed for healing, and it works on all levels, so physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. Those are all considered important and relevant. So here we're going to look at an illustration in Hands of Light. So hopefully you can see that. So she refers to particular bodies. So you can see there's etheric body, emotional body, mental body, astral body. There's the etheric template, the celestial body, and catheric body. So those are some terminologies that she has presented to help explain these things. And it's similar to some other metaphysical teachings. So you'll commonly see references to the etheric, to the astral. Another term you'll often find is causal, the causal body. So these things exist on these different levels beyond the physical. So we're going into the emotional, mental, and spiritual levels. So in her model here, on the physical plane, that's where you have the etheric body, the emotional body, and the mental body. So that's how we're kind of interacting with this physical world, with our basic electromagnetic energy, with our emotions, with our thoughts, with our mind. So that's happening here on this physical plane. Then beyond that, she points to the astral body, and the astral body, from her point of view, exists on the astral plane being kind of a bridge between the physical realm and the higher spiritual planes or dimensions. After the astral body, she refers to the energy bodies that correlate with the spiritual plane. So there she identifies the etheric template, the celestial body, and the etheric body. And on that level, she says that the etheric template is kind of the physical aspect of that plane, whereas the celestial body is the emotional aspect, and the etheric body is the mental aspect. So I know all this can be a little confusing and hard to wrap our minds around in terms of how all of that relates to our everyday life experience, to what we're personally going through as we work with other people, whether we're doing this professionally or just looking at our own everyday relationships. And when I speak to lay people about the energy fields, the aura and energy bodies, I usually like to keep it more simple. I like to talk about things in practical terms that everyday people would use in their common discussion of things. So I say that we have our physical body, and that is kind of the tip of the iceberg of our energy. It's the part that we can perceive with our five senses. It feels kind of solid, and it seems kind of concrete in a sense that it's not fluid. There's a stable form. So it's the body or plane where there's an actual form you perceive. Then beyond that, there's the emotional body, or the emotional layer. And the emotional layer is really pretty fluid, just like our moods are kind of fluid. They can change from 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day to the next. So those are energy waves on the emotional level. And then the next level would be the mental level, the mental body. And here it's our mental patterns, our consistent or repeated patterns of thinking, our thoughts, and our beliefs. So those are a little more stable in a sense than emotions, but they're kind of a finer frequency of energy. So they're a very subtle form of energy, and we're not seeing our thoughts with our five senses, but they are kind of imprinted in the energy field, in that field of light that would potentially be perceived surrounding our physical body. Then beyond the mental level, you would have the spiritual level. And the spiritual level is, in a way, beyond just our feelings and our thoughts. It's kind of the whole collection of experience and energy development that the soul is working on. So it's kind of like the accumulation of the energetic experience from the layers beneath it. So it's continuing to evolve and expand based on the experiences on the physical, emotional, and mental layers. So it's a very dynamic system. And when we're going through anything in our life, we can consider that all of these different energy fields or energy bodies are potentially relevant, and they all have a ripple effect upon one another. So what you're going through on the physical level is affecting your thoughts, your feelings, and that's all being recorded at the soul level, and it's kind of like this feedback loop that helps us continue to evolve. So if you're dealing, for example, with a physical health condition, or at least what appears from your physical sensory perspective to just be a physical health condition, you may consider that what's happening in your physical body is dependent upon what's happening on the electromagnetic level. So every cell in your body is governed by those electrical and magnetic forces, by all those different frequencies. So it's affected by, it's responding to those energies. And those in turn are being affected by your thoughts, your emotions, your deepest beliefs, your relationship with life itself. So that brings us even further up to the spiritual plane and our connection with non-physical beings, with what you can refer to as your soul, your higher self. So all of those energies beyond our physical form are having an effect on the physical form. And to address those different levels or layers, we might use a variety of methods. So anything that helps you get further or deeper into your consciousness, which could include things like meditation, hypnotherapy. You could be using some form of a psychedelic medicine that helps get you into that state per se where you can access those parts of your consciousness. You might work with a shaman, someone who connects to the spiritual plane as a support or assistance for you, who helps retrieve what are called soul fragments, or parts of your consciousness that kind of got disconnected or stuck somewhere. So there's those different modalities for connecting on the spiritual and also on the mental and emotional layers. We can do things that work directly with energy. So people that do hands-on type energy healing, Reiki, pranic healing, polarity therapy, Qigong, quantum touch, healing touch. There's many different styles and traditions of healing with energy, using our own being, working kind of through the physical body to access the aura and direct energy. So that's one way of working with energy. We can also work with color, with light, with sound, all these different vibrational energies. They all have a resonance and a harmonic effect upon our energy system, so they could all be of potential benefit. There are also homeopathic medicines, which kind of are a bridge between the chemical layer and the energetic layer. You also have aromatherapy, essential oils that are also kind of combining something physical with the energetic aspect of that physical substance or item. There's crystals and gems. Again, you have something that's physically here in our physical form that also corresponds with particular metaphysical energies and properties. You have energy psychology, which often combines something that accesses the physical body with a process that's used to connect to memories, to emotions, to thoughts, to beliefs. So there are modalities like Psych-K, kinesiology, emotional freedom technique, neuro-emotional healing technique. We could go on. There's a whole spectrum of different modalities that kind of bridge the mental and physical, where we're perhaps working with brain waves and brain hemisphere, with acupuncture circuits, meridians, while tapping into something on an emotional or mental level. There's EMDR, the eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. There's other modalities that work with the brain in some way, and how the brain is activated, how it's processing memories, and so on. So those are used often in psychotherapy. psychotherapy field traditionally was focused a lot on talk therapy, more on a cognitive and somewhat behavioral level, so helping people think about their lives, their patterns, their actions. But it's been really recognized a lot more now that that's affected a lot by our subconscious. So we might work with hypnotherapy to see what we can access from the subconscious that's driving our conscious thoughts and observed behaviors. And we could tap into the body, somatic therapies, where the body is holding essentially energies and memories and genetic programs from our ancestors, all those things, so that we have the power to start shifting things, to release patterns that we feel aren't helpful for us at our current point in life, and to bring in and kind of energize or embody the qualities or patterns or energies that we view as desirable in the present. As I mentioned, these different energy fields, there's different degrees of fluidity or flexibility to them in a sense. So on some levels it's easier than others in a way to foster a shift or transformation. So if you're working on the physical body level, you might try to push some form of change through diet, through taking supplements, herbs, medications. All those things are designed to kind of push the functioning of the physical body in a particular direction. But our physical body is this denser layer of the system, and it's often challenging to get the physical body to change if you haven't addressed those other subtle or energetic layers. You may perceive a person very rapidly experience physical changes after you've had a major shift occur with their emotional or mental or spiritual energy fields or energy bodies. And when things are shifted on those levels, very often you'll find that the results are more long-lasting, more permanent in a sense, because you've gotten more to the core of a particular pattern. So it's like you're getting to the archetypal level of something rather than just the surface permutation or manifestation of that. So I encourage everyone to consider more of energy healing and energy medicine in their personal health regimen and healing practices. If you are a healthcare professional in whatever field you may be working, to think more in terms of this broader system of the multidimensional or multifaceted aspects of our being, so we don't get stuck in a limited view of things and in just a limited range of treatment interventions. Just because we perceive our interventions aren't helping someone, that doesn't mean that there's a whole spectrum of other possibilities of resources that might get more toward the source or cause or origin of a person's challenges. I thank each of you for taking your time to watch this presentation. And for those that are interested in energy healing, holistic medicine, holistic wellness, and spiritual growth and development, you're invited to visit my website, phinsights.com. That's phinsights.com. For now, I wish each of you a wonderful day. Namaste.